Shalom, Shalom, Show. Welcome again to the rap. Whew. Standard of living. You hear that term be tossed around quite a bit. But my question is this: who determines your standard of living? Do they determine your standard of living, or do you determine your standard of living? Oftentimes society as a whole, Egypt has determined people's the standard of living, and they've determined, government. They say, you need the brand new car, or you need the Harvard education, or that you need to eat this food, or you need to take this vacation, or you need to go out, this many times a month and go to the movies and buy these nice clothes and eat this, food from, Fresh and Easy, or, these expensive places, and then they pay you a certain amount of money and tell you that you are to spend your money on the standard of living that they have created for you. Well, I ask you, whose standard of living are you going by? Theirs or yours? Because if you spend your life trying to live according to their standard of living, you're going to find yourself broke, destitute, whatever. You need to determine your standard of living, and you need to come out of what they say. If you don't need a brand new vehicle, then you don't need a brand new vehicle. There's no point in buying it to increase your standard of living, or because they said you should buy one, after you pay your car off for 2 years, that you should trade it in and get a new one. They tell you that you need to live in this apartment. You need to live in Chicago or New York or San Francisco or San Diego, or, areas where they want you to live. For you to make the sacrifice and come out of her and live according to the scriptures, live according to what the Bible says, live a quiet and simple life, grow your own food, build your family, leave something for your children. They see that as you're sacrificing your standard of living. You're sacrificing the thing that they want you to spend your money on, that they consider their standard of your living. That's really what it is. Their standard of your living. You are to spend your money on what they want. You are to chase the things that they have presented before you, because it is their standard for your living. Well, who sets the standard for your life? Do you or do they? And that's a question you really have to ask yourself as we come to and through these economic times, is whose standard of living are you trying to live, yours or theirs? And have you even established what a standard of living for yourself looks like? Do you even know what it looks like? Do you even know what standard for your life you want? And I'm asked this question: why do you want it? If you say, "Well, I want that Porsche, or I want that Ferrari or Lamborghini, or I want that brand new this or brand new that," well, why? Who told you needed it? Did you ever ask yourself that question? Whose standard of living are you living? Men, I ask you that same question because that pressure's on you. Oftentimes that pressure's on you. You're trying to live a standard of living that the system told you. You're trying to live a standard of living to try and appease or to attract a particular woman. So a lot of times you go way beyond your standard of living. What you find out is that you've never lived your standard of living, man. Ever. You've always lived somebody else's standard of living. You've always chased what somebody else wanted for you. They dangle it, you chase it, you put the money behind it, then you get it, and you find yourself lacking. I grow my own food. Whose standard of living is that? Well, that's mine, according to what the Word says. That's what the Word says. That's what the Bible says. So I've chased that standard of living. Who created your standards? Because there's two masters you're going to serve. There's Yah and there's Satan. One of those two is creating your standard. And there's ample freedom in Satan's standards, and there's ample freedom in Yah's standards. One leads to life and life more abundantly. One leads to, eventually, economic destruction for you and your household. One leads to unbelievable amounts of debt. And the Bible says the borrower is a servant to the lender. When times like this comes, one leads to hunger. One leads to starvation. One leads to living a life of want and never getting it. One leads to eventually destitution, as we see what's happening in this economic collapse. You live y'all's life, sure. You're going to be on the outskirts, sure. People are going to look at your life and say, well, his standard of living is not my standard of living. No, my standard of living may not be your standard of living, but my standard of living is debt-free. My standard of living is me building my own home and me owning my own land, me raising my own food, me raising my own family. And you hear a lot of that is my own, my own, my own, my own. It's not societally or communally or governmentally owned. I'm not sharing it with another. I'm not sharing it with the system. I'm not continuing to keep paying, living in an apartment, dropping $1,200 rent and never getting any closer to owning it. That's the standard of living that they have presented to you. You're never going to own it, but be okay with never owning it. Be okay with it never being yours. Be okay renting that wife. Be okay renting those children. Be okay renting that car. Be okay renting that house. Be okay renting that apartment. Be okay renting that everything that you own. Be okay partially owning it, co-owning it. That's where that whole co-parenting system came from, that the system gave to us. Wives, leave your husbands and co-parent, but the government, will play the most integral part. We'll be the most important parent between you, the two of you and that child. Because everything's co-ownership now. And it's co-owning it with the system. Because they are dictating your standard of living. You see right now there's some canned, I think that's some spinach that they're canning or have canned. You see the wall, this is my standard. Food preservation, having food stored, growing my own food. I don't need to make hundreds of thousands of dollars because I've dictated my standard of living. I've said, you know what? This is what me and my family are going to live. And everybody's happy. And nobody has any want. In fact, they have more than they need. Their words. When your children tell you they're happy, your wives tell you they're happy, everybody tells you they're happy, you realize that you're living a better standard of living. You know what? This is not a standard of living that they are used to. Because they all came from, both Sister T and Sister Ebony came from the society, as did I. But this is the standard of living that we have dictated, that I have said, this is what we're going to live. According to the Bible, this is what I said we're going to live. So instead of dropping $500 for a pair of shoes, why not drop that same $500 for a wheat grinder? My standard of living, according to what I read in the Bible. Being self-sufficient as possible, preserving our own lives in these times. And that's what you need to have right now. Preserve your own life in the times that we live in today. Bless y'all. Shalom.